on a really busy sports night. I appreciate you guys being here. Welcome into Rebel Report Live. My name is Michael Borky. Again, busy sports night. Watching a hockey game a second ago over dinner, and I know you got basketball going on right now as well. So I'm glad that, of course, Major League Baseball, busy time of year in the sports world, so appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out, talking about Ole Miss sports. Today's topic, the lead of the day. Ole Miss ranked number 5 in a preseason poll. Number 6 in another one. 2 came out today. Nothing official. It's not like the coaches poll or the AP poll that they're going to use until the college football playoff poll comes out a few weeks into the season. But still, some pretty prominent, well-known college football media members put polls out today and had Ole Miss at number 5 and number 6. Obviously, that is good to see if you're an Ole Miss fan because people believe in your team, and I think they should. But are they overrated? Is that number 5 ranking justified for Ole Miss entering the 2024 season? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Again, my name is Michael Borky. Appreciate you guys being here. Don't forget, if you're listening on the website or if you're watching on YouTube, to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get them. Just search Rebel Report. Leave a rating and a review after you hit that subscribe button. Also follow me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Michael Borky, Borkey. And this edition of the Rebel Report is brought to you by the Gregory Law Firm. Sometimes, guys, injuries are unavoidable, especially if you are a clumsy you-know-what like me. They're going to happen over the course of a season. Hey, we're going to talk about that a little bit coming up here in a bit. But you shouldn't have to worry about getting injured, especially on the job or when you're just in the car, going to the grocery store or wherever. If you have been personally injured or you have a small business or contract dispute, call attorney DJ Gregory of the Gregory Law Firm located in Saltillo, Mississippi to discuss your legal options. I hope you never have to use this number, but if you need an attorney, injury, small business, contract disputes, DJ Gregory's got you covered. 662-397-9799. 662-397-9799. Don't delay. Call DJ today. The Gregory Law Firm. Save that number. Use them because that day, if that day comes, you will want to use somebody that will take the best care of you. And knowing DJ personally, he will take the best care of you. So, Ari Wasserman of The Athletic is the one that put Ole Miss at number 6 in his preseason poll. Today, I want to talk about Joel Klatt, just for a little while anyway. He put Ole Miss at number 5. I'll give you his top 10. I'll do top 15. Why not? Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, Oregon 4, Ole Miss at 5, Utah at 6. I like Joel doing this. Utah returns a lot of guys. I like showing some love to the Utes. They could have a really, really, really good season. Alabama number 7, Michigan 8, Penn State 9, Missouri 10, Notre Dame 11, Florida State 12, Clemson 13, LSU 14. That's a little high to me. Maybe I assume we'll get to that later when we get to the comments. And USC 15. So Ole Miss at number 5 in Joel Klatt's preseason poll. You are going to see so many of these come out between now and when the season begins. You're going to see so many. And Ole Miss is going to be ranked somewhere around number 5 in all of these preseason polls. They will land somewhere in the top 10 going into the season. I think closer to 5 than 10, but somewhere in the top 10. And so when I saw that, my question was, or at least the question that I want to bring to you guys, is that number justified? Do they deserve to be looked at that highly in the preseason? So I decided to lay it out like this in my nifty little Sanderson Farms Championship notebook here. Shout out to the good people at the Sanderson Farms Championship, by the way. Hope you guys go this year. They are not paying for me for this. I hope you go. It is an it's so well run and really just a fun tournament to go to. And the access to the players is awesome. It'll be the weekend that Ole Miss is at South Carolina. So, if you're in the area, you'll be around. They have big screens on the course. So if you go to the Saturday round, you can watch the game too. If you're an NFL fan, you can do that too. The tournament means a lot to me. And I know professional golf is in a weird spot. And so supporting Mississippi's PGA Tour event, I think, is just something that you should do as a sports fan. Anyway, no free plugs, even though I just gave one. I laid it out like this. Things about Ole Miss that I'm worried about, or more specifically have questions about, and then things that I'm not worried about and don't have any questions about, things that I'm really confident in with this team. And then we'll look at the teams around them to see kind of where they fit and whether or not they deserve that ranking. So I'll start with the bad stuff. Things that I'm worried about. This is kind of like a free space on your bingo card. Quarterback health. I think Jackson Dart, the way he plays is endearing to fans. There was, I mean, it was that hit in the Georgia Tech game 2 years ago where he was still in that competition with Altmaier, even though everybody knew that he was better. But still, there was a competition. Kiffin was doing that weird splitting reps thing. And he took on a Georgia Tech defensive back and just ran that dude over. And it was in that moment that, okay, that Jackson Dart's the quarterback for Ole Miss. It's Jackson Dart's football team. The way he plays is admirable. It's galvanizing for fans. Clearly, the team responds to it really, really well. He's tough as hell. That is one of his best attributes, is how tough he is. And the way he plays the game is really admirable. Love watching him play. I like toughness in my quarterbacks. And Ole Miss going from Matt Corral to Jackson Dart on the toughness level is pretty unique. Those are two dudes that play the game with an edge, and I really, really like that about him. He needs to tone some of the hits down. He needs to run out of bounds. He needs to slide. He needs to take fewer hits. He got himself hurt last year. There was no reason for him to take the hit that he did in the Georgia game. He got himself hurt. If you're going to make a deep playoff run, you can't have the most important player on your team getting himself hurt unnecessarily. You cannot do it. And so, while I admire the toughness, he's got nothing to prove to anybody. If you get a first down, slide, run out of bounds, protect your body. That is the biggest thing, frankly, with this team that I'm concerned about. And again, it's kind of a free space because what team is just going to keep on being great without their quarterback? Not many, if any at all. And Ole Miss is no exception to that. I know people like Walker Howard, and I get it. But still, Jackson Dart needs to protect himself better this season than he did last season. It's a long season. They plan on playing more than 12 games or more than 13 games. You need a healthy quarterback. He's got to protect his body. As that Red Beans guy in New Orleans says, respect your body. He's got to respect his body a little bit. That's number one. Number two to me is running back. That's something that I've got questions about. Now, they've portaled well. They've done a really nice job in the portal. You guys know I like Ulysses Bentley. They've added Henry Parrish, who we've talked about here. They've added 3 portal running backs. One with Diggs not going to be available immediately right away, but they've done a very nice job in the portal at running back. They have. And I guess technically they've lost 2, well really 3 with Jam Griffin, but you guys have, if you've been listening to me every day, I've told you that they did not like what they had in the running back room, absent Ulysses Bentley. They weren't confident in it. The entry to the transfer portal should have surprised nobody. He was not going to play this season. They needed multiple bodies in that room because they didn't like what they had absent Ulysses Bentley. They've done that. But I still have a question about whether or not those guys are going to be able to not be Quinshon Judkins, because they're not. None of them are. And that's okay to say. Judkins is an elite level running back. You guys hear me say that too much. I'm a broken record. He was almost 300 carries last year. He never turned the football over. He did not fumble. He fell forward. He was tough to tackle. His only downside was the lack of the next gear in breakaway speed. But despite all of the drama, and there was a lot of drama, and despite the fact that there might be a net positive when it comes to team continuity and like locker room culture, he was still a great player, is still a great player. 300 carries almost have to be replaced. Can these guys do it? Again, they don't have to be him. They just have to be productive. Ole Miss has been productive before Judkins. They'll be productive after Judkins. But that's still fair to have the question of, whether or not these guys are going to be able to produce that caliber of a running game. I think that they can. I think that they're going to run the football well this year, but I would like to see it first before I tell you, oh, yeah, they're not going to miss Judkins at all good. I want to see it first. So that's question number 2 is running back room. Offensive line, this and one I'm going to get to later are basically the same thing. Because on paper, the Ole Miss offensive line got better. So you're probably wondering, well, why is it a question? It's simple, just portal continuity. Can these guys come in and gel and mesh and play well together and have a good internal culture in the offensive line room? That's all I'm really getting at here, because talent-wise, they've upgraded. The 4 portal additions on the offensive line on paper are really good. Only one of them is coming from the group of 5, and he was an elite level group of 5 interior lineman already. So I know it's a jump to the SEC, but still, the pedigree tells you that he's a really good college football player. You got Drake Mays, left tackle, and 2 guys from the best offensive line in football a year ago. The only question I have is, can they mesh? Can they become a sound unit? Because there's more to offensive line play than just being really talented. And so can they bring in this influx of new bodies to this room? And luckily for Ole Miss, they all came and got to go through spring together. I think it's a really important piece. They got to practice together. They've had the spring to get acclimated to town and to campus and stuff like that. They got to have that buffer zone while also playing football, as opposed to having them all join in the spring portal window. The fact that they came in January is a positive, but still, offensive line was a big problem for Ole Miss last year. Can these guys come in and acclimate and be what they're capable of being on paper? Fourth question is defensive line depth. The depth is a thing, and I see in the comments already that there's a question about Tyler Barron. If he were to come to Ole Miss, I have not seen a decision yet on his part. So if they're able to get him, I feel a little bit better about this. But look, Ivy Pegues, Nolan, Uman Mielen, Xavier Harris, I really, really like, for example. I think Akelo Stone will be able to give them some nice things. Depth is something that I'm curious about on the defensive line. I think on the offensive line, they've got some pretty nice depth. They've been able to hang on to guys that are not going to see the volume of snaps that they got a year ago. They're not going to, but they stayed around. Ole Miss offensively can sustain not major injuries on the offensive line, but like a guy, if he's out for a week or two with like a sprained ankle or something like that. I think on offense, they're more equipped to handle they're more equipped to handle that, I think, on the offensive line than they are the defensive line in terms of what we know. Can they sustain an injury or two that lingers for a couple of weeks? Do they have the depth that can overcome something like that? That is a question that I have. What happens if Walter Nolan gets hurt for a couple of weeks, or God forbid, for the season? What happens if Princely goes down, or Pegues goes down, or Ivy goes down for a period of time? Do they have enough guys that can fill their void until they come back? I don't know. We will have to see. And then finally, mentioned it with the offensive line already, portal acclimation. Team appears to have a really good culture. Lane Kiffin has talked about that many times. We've heard the players throughout the spring talk about that. If you listen to Jared Ivey, the aforementioned Jared Ivey's podcast, you see that they are speaking very positively about the kind of cohesive feeling that they have as a team. It's a very good sign, but still, I mean, you've got an entirely new running back room, and maybe 4 of your 5 offensive line starters are transfers. You've got a new tight end, not a starter, but you got a new tight end. There's Juice Wells. There's multiple guys on the defensive line. There's multiple guys in the secondary. One just now joining the team. Will all of them come in and buy into the team and the culture and how they do things and acclimate the right way? That's always that's a free space, kind of like quarterback depth in this era, unless you're Clemson or LSU. Clemson on purpose, LSU, they tried to get guys. They just, I guess, couldn't do it. But for most everybody else, you're bringing in some number of transfer portal players, are they going to be able to acclimate in time to fit into your team and to your culture? So that is my question. So free spaces, quarterback health, portal acclimation, but um, running back room replacing the 270 carries that Judkins gave you last year in being productive enough. Um, Offensive lines continuity and depth on the defensive line are the things that I have questions about for Ole Miss this year. But things that I'm really confident that they have with this team. Number one, coaching staff, and more importantly, coaching staff continuity. You know Lane Kiffin's a good coach already. He's proven it. You know Pete Golding's a good defensive coordinator already. He's proven it. And frankly, you know Charlie Weiss Jr. is a good offensive play caller as well. And I know that there are some people that think that's insane, but there is a phenomenon that exists around Ole Miss internet land where Lane Kiffin gets all the credit for good offense and Charlie Weiss Jr. gets all the bad or all the criticism for bad offense. If you're going to blame Weiss when it's bad, you have to give him credit when it's good. If you're going to give Kiffin credit when it's good, you have to blame him when it's bad. It's a wild phenomenon that exists where Kiffin gets all the credit and Weiss gets all the blame. Frankly, they both deserve credit and blame when things go well and things go poorly. That continuity, it's not just that they have the coaching staff that they have paired with the other staff members, Randall Joyner, for example, Kevin Smith, all the other guys that the staff is really strong. But the continuity with head coach and play callers is a big, big, big deal. When there's so much turnover in those spots across college football, Ole Miss and their players, it's all the same. It's the same voices. It's the same scheme. Now, of course, they're adding things and changing up things, but it's the same people. The comfort level cannot be overstated there. That is a big, big deal. Put a big star next to that one because there are other teams in college football that don't share, other teams that are expected to win titles that don't have that this year. The continuity with the coaching staff for Ole Miss is a big, big deal, big positive. Number two, quarterback paired with offensive weapons. The luxury that Ole Miss has, and that Texas has, for example, but there's Utah is another one. But the luxury that Ole Miss has with a veteran multi-year starting quarterback, and not only the experience that he has having played in all of these venues in the SEC already, like he's been to Tiger Stadium, he knows what to expect. He's been to Tuscaloosa, on and on and on. Been to College Station, on again. He's experienced all that. He's been there. But to have the most important position on the field be the guy that Jackson Dart is, the not only the productive player, but the emotional leader of the team, is also gigantic. And there are a lot of teams that have big expectations that don't know yet what they have at quarterback. Ole Miss, you are guaranteed with what you have at quarterback, knock on wood, barring he stay healthy. And then offensive weapons. Harris and Watkins, Priestcorn are known commodities in that offense. You add an explosive guy like Juice Wells, should he be healthy, which everybody thinks that he will be. And suddenly you've got a trio of frontline wide receivers that are among the best in all of college football. Priestcorn is just a really, really solid tight end, and he was great against the second best defense they played all season, possibly. The third best defense they played all season in Penn State in the bowl game. So you know what he's capable of. They also portaled well behind him there. And the numbers for the running backs that they brought in, although it's a question whether or not they can replace Judkins, the volume of experience that you have with quarterback and his weapons cannot be overstated. Priestcorn is a married father. You know what I mean? Trey Harris has played a ton of football. Jordan Watkins has played a ton of football. Juice Wells has played a ton of football. Henry Parrish, Ulysses Bentley played a ton of football, et cetera, et cetera. The weapons that they have, the proven weapons that they have on offense paired with the continuity with the quarterback and coaching staff is a big deal. We've talked about schedule a lot already, so I won't rehash that too much, but Ole Miss does have a favorable schedule. Now it's tough. They have to play Georgia, but I think they have a favorable schedule. 4 of their 5 road games are against teams that had losing records a year ago. Um, you have to go to South Carolina, but they're not going to be particularly good. Usually a difficult place to play, not a difficult team to play in that difficult place. Same with Florida, same with Arkansas. The schedule sets up and is one that should lead to double-digit wins for Ole Miss this season. And also, how about linebacker? That is something that you have not been able to say very often in modern Ole Miss football history. But don't you kind of love what they have at linebacker? Portaled well with Chris Paul Jr. from Arkansas. He was really productive there. Good player. Kari Coleman's back. I really liked what I saw from Dudley in the bowl game. Obviously, Centarian Perkins is there. There's a lot to like about what they have currently at linebacker. So that's something that I wanted to throw in there to just give another position besides quarterback and receiver a shout out, because I do really like what they have in the linebacker room right now. There's a lot of promise there, a whole lot of promise for Ole Miss at linebacker. There's other things to like about this team too, but those are the things that kind of stood out to me was coaching staff and continuity, veteran quarterback paired with the experienced weapons, the schedule, and a shout out to the linebackers, because I think Ole Miss has a group of really, really good ones. And finally, when you look at these rankings, Utah notwithstanding, but Ohio State and Georgia, I think, are 2 teams that I would trade Ole Miss's roster for. But I don't know if there's anybody else that I would in college football. But look at the teams behind Ole Miss. Alabama. Alabama's literally replacing the greatest college football coach of all time, paired with a bunch of dudes that hit the portal and a bunch more that went to the NFL. Michigan lost Harbaugh, a bunch of dudes to the NFL, and they also have a rookie head coach. Penn State, now Franklin's back, made a change at offensive coordinator, but still has who he has at quarterback. Missouri lost their defensive coordinator, lost the SEC's leading rusher. Quarterback's back, but they did lose some pieces. They've portaled well. Should have a pretty explosive offense, frankly, even missing that running back. But still, there's missing pieces there. When you look around, what you know about Ole Miss is a lot more than what you know about a lot of teams that are going to show up in these rankings. What you know about Ole Miss is a hell of a lot more than what you know about LSU or Tennessee or Oklahoma or Southern Cal or Clemson or, even Florida State. There is so much more known about Ole Miss than a lot of these teams that are going to be around where they're going to be in preseason rankings. The continuity piece of it is a lot of why Ole Miss is getting the ranking that they are. The roster's really good. Yes, I know that they're relying on some portal guys, but they have more continuity than most teams in college football. And so that's why I think that, yes, they're ranking, or I should say no, they are not being overrated entering the 2024 season. Yes, that ranking, if it's number 5, if it's 6 or 7 going into the season, is earned and appropriate. Everything that they want to achieve this year is exclusively up to them, and then, knock on wood, some good injury luck. This is, how many times have you been able to say that in Ole Miss sports history or Ole Miss football history? How many times have you been able to say that their goals, the only thing in the way of their goals is themselves? That's it. They have a roster that can compete with every single team on their schedule. Not compete like any given Sunday kind of compete. That they should line up and be better than all but one team on their schedule. And that one team on their schedule is at home. They are appropriately rated to start the season. So we'll get to your comments after I tell you the podcast is brought to you in part by Advantage Business Systems. Check them out online, absms.com. Advantage Business Systems has you covered for all of your office technology needs. Tell them I sent you. You'll get a complimentary office technology assessment. So you tell them what you need and what your budget is, and they will find a solution for you on me. It's Advantage Business Systems, absms.com. The podcast is also brought to you by Priority One Bank. Let them make you their priority. They've got 16 locations here in Mississippi, so there's very likely to be one in your backyard. If you need a loan, it's not just getting a loan, it's getting a loan from somebody that you sit down with face to face. You don't have to get on the phone or talk to somebody on Zoom that's in a different state or a different part of this state. It's local loan servicing and decision making. So you get to know the person that will help you with whatever you need because Priority One Bank makes you their priority. Welcome in, Brandon. Glad to see you. Glad to see you, Pat, as well. Appreciate you guys being here. You'd say that they are ranked about right. Here's another one, deserved ranking. Only thing we need to worry about is the coaching staff making sure the team is bought in. And listening to players and coaches talk about that, I don't know if it's like a super secret formula or something, but it does feel like they have found some strings that they think work when they pull them, if that makes sense. It seems like they have found the ways to keep a team engaged and keep a culture intact despite a lot of moving parts. Kiffin talks going into last season, and maybe we should have listened even closer than we did, but I know we talked about it. He talks so much about the end of 22 and why it blew up. And some of it was lacking some personal accountability on why, in part, that blew up because of the Auburn flirting and whatnot. He could have handled all of that a hell of a lot better than he did, but whatever. It happens. That was a long time ago. That was almost 2 years ago at this point. Working on 2 years. So I thought that kind of distracted away from his message a little bit that, they did not do a good enough job of keeping a team together and that they are doing a better job of that going into the season. And then sure enough, even though the players have mentioned that there was some volatility or is that the right word? There was some contention early in the season in the locker room despite that, but they were able to overcome it, win some games, and got better as the season went on. They have trimmed some fat that needed to be trimmed, and I'm not just talking about the player that you guys think I'm talking about. There was a couple of guys that needed to go that were damaging to the internal dynamics of that team. And when you've got 90 to 100 guys in a locker room, of course, you're going to have some people that are not fully bought in, right? You're not going to get 100 guys to be the exact same, but it sounds like they have kind of figured that out. It's a good thing. I have not heard anything about Tyler Barron. I have not, one way or the other. I've always thought he was going to end up at Ole Miss after he hit the portal. We will see if that ends up being correct. I'm curious about the receiver offers. I think that might be more a product of wanting to, like they see guys that they think are good enough that could possibly be willing to be limited snap guys and then be in position next year to play a lot because, Ole Miss is losing their top 3 wide receivers after this year. And, it's the portal era, maybe even more than that. So maybe they look at it as an opportunity to, hey, look, I can go play in that offense. And although I won't play much in 24, at least 3 guys are gone. And so I should go to Ole Miss. And after that, or after this year, I could step up and be the guy in a really explosive offense. So I think that's more part of it than like trying to read between the lines about, Deion Smith or something like that. So they were 8 last year and on paper improved at every position group except running back. On paper, absolutely. I can't argue against you. On paper, they have improved or maintained Because I don't know if they quote unquote improved at quarterback other than what you hope is more progression from your guy. Whatever. That's splitting hairs. Doesn't matter. Yes, I agree with you. I talk too much. It's fine. You need to call DJ Gregory and tell him you slipped in Kirby Smart's office with the no wet floor sign. Utes will end up in the top 4 with a bye. They are my pick to win the Big 12. They're going to win the Big 12. Love Dart's playing style, but slide once in a while. I agree. You think even with Howard, we can make the playoffs? This team is loaded even for a mediocre quarterback. You would much rather have Dart. I hear you, though. I just I don't think anybody can do it without their guy. Yeah, including Texas. Now, Howard or Simmons could probably win most of the games on the schedule considering the roster, but I don't think you can beat Georgia, without him. I don't think you can go to Baton Rouge and win without him. But I certainly think that you could line up and still beat Kentucky with a lesser quarterback than Dart, for example, or beat Arkansas, stuff like that. Dart running over the Georgia Tech DB gave you some Tim Riggins vibes. Are they really that much better? Last year's team was a couple of bad breaks from 8-4. Many of the same players are back. I don't see every one-score game going their way again. So many of the same players are back. It's true. But they didn't have a talent like a Walter Nolan on their team a year ago. They didn't have a Princely Umanmielen on the team a year ago. They didn't have a Chris Paul on the team a year ago, frankly. They didn't have Trey Amos last year. They dramatically improved on paper on the offensive line. Those guys have to acclimate, but I think that looking at this team as if it's the exact same talent-wise as last year's team is not doing them justice. And the thing is, were they a couple bad breaks from 8-4? Sure. But they were one throw on target from being tied with Alabama in the fourth quarter in Tuscaloosa. You know what I mean? So they made the plays necessary to win the games. And then they upgraded, at least on paper, in positions that they needed to. The most important one, offensive line. They needed to upgrade there, and they really did so. And they've got depth there too. So, yes, a lot of the same players are back, but look at what they're going to be starting and what the pedigree talent-wise of those guys are, and it's not the same team as it was a year ago. Not talent-wise. You'd be willing to bet that this year they go 60-40 pass to run? Ooh, I think it might be the opposite. Only because I think that they're going to really be able to just bleed teams to death on the ground. All rankings are rat poison. Love the Hold the Mayo reference. Look at this, MFer. I love that guy. I absolutely love that guy. Can't go past a run with RPO. Run is first read. Offense is based on RPO. Yeah, but I think that you might see more. You might see some 2 tight end sets this year. You might see some 2 back sets this year. Also, Rebel softball up 4-2, bottom 5. They had a tough year. They had a really tough year, and then they turn around and win a series against Arkansas, huh? It's, the SEC's best, roster of teams is softball. Of all things, it's softball. Having to play in a weird, through stadium construction and stuff, just tough year for them. But anyway. Bring in the best defensive tackle, one of the top edge rushers, one of the top linebackers, plenty of secondary depth, one of the top receivers, tons of O-line help. Yeah, much better. I agree. How many coaches do I think they keep after next year? That's a good question. It's a really good question. I mean, your staff is always going to turn over some. I don't. I mean, this is more of. I don't even want to call it an educated guess, but I don't think Pete Golding is leaving Ole Miss um, for another head coaching job because, frankly, I think that there is a strong possibility that Pete Golding is the next head coach at Ole Miss, and so leaving might put that possibility in jeopardy. I don't know that. Like, Keith Carter hasn't told me, "Hey, I'm going to hire him after that." But I do think that there is a line of thinking that would keep Pete Golding in Oxford. Aside from the family stuff too, that if you guys watched the season episode, you saw that you know his wife is a she wanted to be in Mississippi. They said that, so I think that that's the next step for him, especially. What receiver is anybody going to double? That's a good point. I mean that's that they have an embarrassment of weapons on offense. That they really do. They really do. The only question, that's why I put it as a question, is the offensive line. Can they be good enough up front to make that matter? You have 45 years of emotional scar tissue from Ole Miss football. You have a hard time believing they will be dominant. They don't have to be dominant, they just have to win. They weren't dominant last year, but they won 10 games. Just win 10. That's all you got to do, get to the playoff. Kiffin has never passed more than 50%. 60 would be a huge change. He typically runs 55 to 60% of the time. Even changing offense a good bit won't get over 50 passing, you say. Weiss and Kiffin were better in 23 than in 22. I agree. He also has the best offensive line he's ever had, and teams will be playing to stop the pass. It will probably be about 53% rushing and 47% passing. Oh, we've got a bet happening on in here. I like this. I really like this. You feel bad for OPD if they take down Georgia? Well, as we've talked about, guess who won't be there? I love him. He's one of my very best friends and a remarkable person. But him getting married on the day that Ole Miss could possibly be playing the biggest regular season game in the history of the program, and I cannot be there to cover it. I'm going to get him to write me a check for every download that show would have gotten, both watch live on podcast, watch live on YouTube, and download on podcast. For every person that would have watched that, and it would be the biggest one ever. That would be the biggest day for me ever. And then I won't miss radio shows, obviously. I want him to write me a check for it. That's how he can make up for it. (1959 and 62 were really strong teams. Yeah. What I've decided is I don't. The era comparison debate's always interesting, right? Like, who's a better quarterback? This guy that played in 1992 or this guy that's playing now? Well, it's probably the guy that's playing now because he's asked to do a heck of a lot more. Same thing in basketball. It's, people do this era comparison. Well, this player would have never lasted in the 90s. Well, 4 in 1992 could never play in today's NBA because they couldn't score. They just had to park under the basket because there's no offensive skill. It's just different. I don't like comparing eras. So when I say of all time, I guess I mean modern era. I mean post-integration, really, is what I'm talking about. I mean, my dad was born in 1962. So, that's anyway. Good to see you, Jerry. Glad you're here, my friend. And you word on Deion Smith. It still sounds like he's on track. Sounds like he's on track. I've always been on the I'll believe it when I see it camp with that because how many times have we had the conversation about him? But at least for Ole Miss's case, They're not desperate, right? Like they're really good at wide receiver without him. They don't quote unquote need him to qualify to meet their goals, right? He is a luxury. He's not a necessity. But it does sound like it's all good there. Pete's wife is now a professor at Ole Miss. Yeah, I'm telling you, I really don't think that they are that he's leaving. I think that he'll be the next head coach at Ole Miss. I think that is what I think is going to happen. I don't know. But if nothing else, I think that he will wait on that opportunity. Is there even a weak spot on the roster? How could they be overrated if that's even a question? I would say again, defensive line depth. And I know they signed a really good class, but if you're depending on freshmen, you know, sometimes it could work out. There are a lot of freshmen that come in and play and all that stuff. But that would be, I think, the biggest weakness is that I don't know if they have championship depth on the defensive line. And I could be proven wrong because these guys could step in and be great right away, right? Certainly could. But that would be I guess it would be that. I guess it would be that. Maybe defensive back depth as well. But I mean, do they have I mean, do they have depth issues at defensive back? I don't know, man. There's just so much to like about this roster. There's so much to like about this roster. Claim I got COVID the day before the wedding, got a mask up and can't be there. Well, I have to go. As badly as I don't want to for so many reasons, I have to go because I would regret it for the rest of my life because he's an outstanding person and a wonderful friend. So Golding is going to take the state job after the Cowbells run their coach out of town. Where's Tyler Barron going? I don't know. I mean, until proven otherwise, I've always assumed he was going to go to Ole Miss. But now that I've said that, sorry guys, he's not. I just ruined that for you. Just completely ruined that for you. Sorry. You'd say Barron would go to Miami or USC. That would stink for Ole Miss. And it wouldn't be the end of the world or anything, but that wouldn't be ideal. There's no doubt, no doubt about that. So he's certainly not going to LSU because, God, Brian Kelly's quotes today. That was. Ooh, if you guys haven't watched it, I tweeted about it. Brian Kelly did the whole. We did. He admitted that they did poorly in the portal. They went after defensive linemen, but didn't sign any because they are going to do things differently at LSU and they're not going to buy players. First of all, that is incredibly rich coming from the coach that is at a program that had a booster go to prison because he was using the hospital charity that he operated to pay football players. One. And two, defensive linemen are expensive. The good defensive linemen are expensive anyway. They've always been expensive. And they will continue to be expensive. And no amount of we do things the right way here is going to change the fact that if you're not going to be a player in the NIL game for defensive linemen, you're not going to get any. But also LSU is paying players because of course they are. They always have been. They will continue to do so. I would love to know why, frankly, that they weren't able to sign any defensive linemen out of the transfer portal. It's not a moral stance. It's not a moral stance. That's a BS cop-out. Why couldn't they, though? Are they poorly funded? Do they not have enough money? Are they not organized well enough? Because LSU's not putting up with a moral stance to not be good at football. They're not doing it. That's not them. So why? What is the reason? Because that is far more interesting than pretending like you're doing things differently at LSU. What Kelly said is why him and Dabo shouldn't be ranked in the top 25 college coaches at this point. Yeah, at least Brian Kelly admitted that they tried. Clemson did not even try. Did not try to sign a single transfer portal player. Did not sign one. Zero. Literally zero. Whew, we'll see how that works out. You say, except for 2015, last year's Ole Miss team was the best ever put on the field talent-wise. I don't think I agree. I don't think I agree. I think 2014 also. And there was probably some teams in the 2000s that were, 08 probably. I don't think last year's Ole Miss team was particularly talented. I think they were coached well and they were quarterbacked well. And they were mentally really tough. I'm not sure if talent was really all that great on last year's team. I just think they were a really, really good team. So you want them to rank Ole Miss top 5 preseason? That'll give Kiffin and company more ammo for the rat poison shtick. Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, I got to run. Thank you so much for tuning in, as you always do. I really, really appreciate you guys. You know that. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, all that good stuff. We'll be back on Thursday. Probably not going to really be talking any baseball, so we'll keep this up. We'll talk football for the rest of the summer unless the baseball team does something to surprise us one way or another. Thank you guys so much again. I'll see you on Thursday.